Welcome to the Weekly Roar, coming live from the Lion's Den, helping new managers become great leaders and awesome bosses. And now, here's your host, Greg Storch.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Lion's Den. This is the Weekly Roar. I'm super excited today because we're kicking off a new series called Mentoring Moments in Leadership, where I'm going to be spending every week with you for the next 6 months. I'm going to be speaking about lessons learned in leadership. And today's first lesson was one of my hardest ones to learn. I'm going to tell you all about it in just a second. But first, I'm Greg Storch. I'm the owner of Lion Enterprise, host of the Weekly Roar, and the founder of a worldwide bartered coaching program called The Helping Hand. I'm a certified professional leadership coach and a certified leadership speaker and trainer. Now, last week, I took the opportunity between ending my last series on effective thinking and beginning this next one to take a look back at one of my favorite episodes of the Weekly Roar. Now, this was from back in April of this year when I held a panel discussion with 6 other leaders, coaches, authors, entrepreneurs, and podcasters. During that episode, we focused on the importance of consistency. Now, the original episode back in April ran almost 2 hours long, but last week's recap was just a highlight of all the gold nuggets from that meeting, and I summarized them all into half an hour. Now, if you weren't able to join us last Wednesday for the Weekly Roar, or if you want to just catch up on the series, or if you wanted to see that session over again, you can access my free video resources on my website at lion-enterprise.com. Just click on the Lion's Pride Library menu to find video number 124 for last week. And while you're in the Lion's Pride Library, make sure you look around and stay a while. It's a free resource, and it's a great way for you to get more of the roar. All right, everyone. A new month and a new series begin today. It's time to start mentoring moments in leadership. And I want to welcome all of you to this journey of growth and development. When I retired from the Navy after almost 24 years, I thought I knew just about all there was to know about leadership. What I eventually learned several years later was that I had only scratched the surface of understanding true leadership. When I began my journey of personal growth almost 5 years ago, I focused on learning everything I could about leadership because I was so passionate about it, and I wanted to put forth the effort to reach my potential as a developer of other leaders. Well, what I quickly realized was that there were some beliefs I developed over the years while I was serving on active duty that were no longer serving me. And today, I'm going to share one of them with you, and this is why I'm calling today's episode, We're Better Together, Even at the Top. Now, I've shared the story before of my successful leadership position with the private IT company that was supporting several federal agencies in Washington, D.C. For those of you who don't know or don't remember, I was the program manager of the company's second largest federal contract. I initially had almost 160 contractors and subcontractors working for me to provide IT services. It was a flailing contract that I was able to breathe new life into, and ultimately, the company held on to that contract for the entire 10 years. Now, I didn't begin as the program manager, though. I was actually the operations manager before I got promoted. And when the time came for me to move up, I needed to find my replacement in operations. So I reached out to a former shipmate of mine, Kate. Kate didn't come from the IT industry. She actually spent her entire adult life in the dental industry. specifically dental sales. And she was pretty damn good at it. Now, when I called Kate about the job in IT, she thought I had lost my mind, but I knew what the teams needed. I knew what I needed in order to turn that sinking ship around, and Kate was the one who could help me do it. But up until I met Kate, one of my leadership beliefs was that leaders should never get friendly with those they lead. I believe that the separation was necessary to make leading easier. Let me explain this a little further. My thinking was that if I wasn't trying to be friends with those I was responsible for leading, it would be easier to make the tough decisions because personal feelings would never get in the way. Well, I was convinced that self-isolation was the right way, and I felt even more supported in my belief when I first heard that saying, "It's lonely at the top." When I heard that quote, I made it fit my dialogue. I remember telling myself, when I get promoted, my relationships are going to have to change. I can no longer hang out with individuals the way I used to, meeting somebody for a coffee or going out to lunch with someone. Now, when Kate took over the daily operations of the contract, I noticed that she began spending a lot of time speaking with people. At the weekly managers meeting, she'd bring in home-baked treats and she'd serve them up to everyone. And in our daily morning meetings, sometimes she would bring in breakfast for everyone. One year, she even invited one of her managers and his family over to her house for Thanksgiving dinner. I was actually infuriated. I was like, "Kate, what are you doing? You can't be friends with these people. You have to lead them." Year after year, Kate did her thing. And finally, when it was time for Kate to move up, the teams took it really hard. She had become like a mother to all of them. Bottom line is, they loved her. And that was the first time I realized that I had it all wrong. I didn't have to distance myself from everyone, and I didn't have to be lonely at the top. As a matter of fact, if you're lonely at the top, then you're doing something wrong. I know that's a complete 180-degree turn from where I used to be just 6 or so years ago, but it was a necessary lesson to learn, and that's why I wanted to share this mentoring moment with you. Here's a couple of things I learned. First of all, we don't get anywhere without the help of others, and that includes leadership. And the second thing I've learned is that good leaders take others along with them. They lift others. And if we're lifting others to the top along with us, then how in the hell can it be lonely at the top? It shouldn't be. And if it is, well, maybe it's time to rethink your approach, just like I did. Let me give you this first tip. Your leadership position isn't what makes you lonely. Your personality does. If you're lonely in your position, it doesn't have to be, and it can be changed by making a different choice. So, how did I change my mind? My leadership approach? Well, Kate certainly set an example that gave me a lot to think about, but I also learned a few other things too. The first one I kind of already mentioned, and that's that we don't achieve anything of significance in life without the help of others. When it comes to leadership, our success comes in large part as a result of those we're leading. When a leader reaches the top, they should reach back with an outstretched arm and give a hand to pull the others up with them. It isn't a competition to reach the top and keep everyone else away, which, come to think of it, that makes the game King of the Hill really crappy for kids growing up. The game really should be to see how many friends you can fit at the top of the hill with you. Instead of King of the Hill, we should call it Kingdom of the Hill. I like that. Now, the second thing I learned that changed my mind was the awesome feeling of helping others get to the top. I have to tell you that I spent a lot of time developing other leaders, and I've shared some of those stories with you before. Good leaders understand that the whole point of leadership, the whole purpose, is to take others to the top. My mentor, John Maxwell, always says a good leader is one who knows the way, shows the way, and goes the way. I feel like that's the perfect saying for this because it's so much better for leaders to help others to get to the top than it is to spend their time climbing to the top alone. The view may be worth the climb, but if you go it alone, who are you going to share the view with? And that leads me to the third thing I learned that helped me unlearn and relearn my thinking about being the person in charge, the one at the top of the org structure. A lot of my time wasn't spent hanging out at the top. It was spent turning around and helping others continue moving along the path. I've done that for so many people over the years. And when we spend time with those we're trying to help, you make the climb to success together and you become connected to them. Have you ever heard that Robert Ingersoll quote, "We rise by lifting others"? Well, to me, that's exactly what I'm talking about here. The only way for a leader to lift others is to stoop and reach down, and you can't do that if you're always just hanging out at the top. Now, I'll be the first one to admit to you that there are risks involved when you allow yourself to forge relationships with those you're leading. There's always the chance that someone may get hurt. As the leader, you could get hurt when you get too close to others because they'll know things about you that maybe not everyone else does. And armed with that privileged knowledge, they could ultimately share it, and that could lead to a betrayal, whether it's intended or not. And your followers also stand the risk of getting hurt too. I've actually had this happen to me as a leader. When I forged relationships with those I was leading, when it was time for me to promote and move on, they felt abandoned and sometimes even betrayed. But with all of that said, if you want to be a more effective leader, you don't have to be lonely at the top. Don't distance yourself too far from your people. Now, if you're like I was, and you believe that leaders must maintain distance from those they lead, or if you're considering making an adjustment in your leadership style to close the gap between you and your people, then let me share a few thoughts with you. Maybe, just maybe, you don't have to be lonely at the top, and here's a few ways to avoid it if you want to become a more effective leader. That's right. Leaders who form relationships with those they lead are far more effective than the leaders who isolate themselves at the top. So, first of all, remember this. If you rely on your title or your position to get others to follow you, you're always going to be a lonely leader. You'll want to stop thinking in terms of position and start thinking in terms of relationships. So build relationships and win people over. Leadership's not just positional, it's relational as well. When leaders use their positions to get others to follow them, they become a lonely leader because they separate themselves from those they're leading. They, in essence, create the feeling that, hey, I'm up here and you're down there, so do what I tell you to do. But the person who takes a relational approach to leadership, they're never going to be lonely. The second point I wanted to make today, and one of the things that helped me to make the shift, was that leadership is all about people. We're in the people business. I know that sounds pretty simple, but You might be surprised by the number of people who forget that as they climb that corporate ladder. I mean, think about it. If you don't have people following you, then you aren't leading, are you? See, in order for a leader to lead well, they have to know those they're leading. Teddy Roosevelt captured this best when he said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Good leaders care about their people. And the last thing I wanted to say today, and you've heard me say this a million times, is that we don't accomplish anything without the help of others. One is just simply too small a number to achieve anything significant. When I finally understood that important fact, I stopped introducing my employees as someone that worked for me, and I started to introduce them as someone I worked with. I have hundreds of personal examples of accomplishments that I've reached that involve the help of other people. Come to think about it, everything I've ever achieved in life is the result of others helping me. But I cannot, for the life of me, find one example where I achieved something significant all by myself. I love this saying by Mother Teresa. She said, I can do things you cannot, and you can do things I cannot. Together, we can do great things. At the end of the day, we need each other, and there's no reason why you can't bring others to the top with you. It doesn't have to be lonely at the top, and all it requires is a change of mindset. So those are just 3 things that can help you transition in your position. Remember these things to help you make the shift. First, don't think only in terms of position. Think also in terms of relationships. Remember that leadership is all about people. If it isn't, you aren't really leading, are you? And the third thing was that we don't achieve anything significant without the help of others. So embrace it. All right, everyone. That's the first mentoring moment that I wanted to share. My shift from believing that leadership meant that I had to be lonely at the top to understanding that it doesn't have to be. If you're a leader who feels isolated or who believes the saying that it's lonely at the top, then you might not be doing something right. If you're lonely as a leader, it's by choice. You can choose to take others along the path with you and share the view at the top. You don't have to climb the mountain alone. Good leaders have a team that they trust, and they have relationships with all of those team members. And then they focus on whatever it is they're all trying to accomplish together. I made the choice to be a leader who takes others on the journey with me. And I hope that you make the same choice. So during this series, I've decided that it might be a good idea to continue our discussions on these topics week after week in the Lion's Den. So after we wrap this up, I'm going to make a simple post that you can add to by sharing your thoughts, ideas, and comments on this week's topic. So today's post will be something along the lines of, when it comes to leadership, are you lonely at the top, or something like that. I hope you'll look for the post and contribute to the discussion because, after all, we're better together. See what I did there? Okay, everyone, if you want to continue running to the roar, then join me next week as I share one of my more recent lessons learned in leadership. If you want to find out what that lesson was for me, then just come on back to the Lion's Den next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks so much, everybody, for supporting me and joining me in this new series. I'm so excited that you're here with me. And thank you again for joining me in the Weekly Roar today. I appreciate you. Now, until we meet again next Wednesday, remember, be powerful, but stay poised just like a lion. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching the Weekly Roar live event at lionenterprise.com. If you enjoyed this video, please tell others to join us each week here in the Lion's Den. Thanks again, and see you next week.